All right, well, welcome to our guests, Kris Rowberry and Mark Rosenzweig. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having us. This is exciting.
Yeah, this is actually going to be a very cool interview because a lot of times we do a lot of management structure and people talking about management or guest services or food and beverage or whatever the case may be from an operational level. But this is very much a guest facing piece,
right?
History of roller coasters, and I like them. I don't know as much terminology as you do, but yeah, I write them. I'm not a student of them.
Well, right. So both of you guys are very affiliated with the National Roller Coaster Museum and Archive. Could you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got to be working with the National Roller Coaster Museum and Archive, and a little bit of a 101 as to the sort of things that you do over there?
Kris, you want to start?
Sure. So I got started by accident, really, in 2020. So it's the height of the pandemic, and Gary Slade, who's the founder and editor of Amusement Today, says, "Yeah, let's go out to the museum. I'll show you. Take a look outside it." Because I'd visited before in 2019, and I got a chance to kind of hang out there for 2 days, just kind of helping out, taking some photos for what would eventually become the Legacy of Schwarzkopf documentary teaser video that was all shot back in 2020. And so we started doing work on that, and I kind of recognized that the museum needed some help volunteering on the digital end. They didn't have a very good social media presence, and I thought, you know what, I think I can help out with this. So I asked to volunteer, and they said yes, and kind of taken off from there. Now I'm doing, gosh, what am I not doing? I'm doing the retail operations for the museum, doing the social media for the museum, and now a full-fledged board member as of September of last year. And that kind of got roped, literally, Mark into the thing, because Mark had always wanted to be part of this too, and kind of railroaded him into the position, actually.
Yeah, no, and you know, Kris, to be fair, I mean, for all intents and purposes, he's been performing the acts of a board member since 2020, in my opinion. So it was a no-brainer for him to join, and I was honored to be invited as well. My background, basically, kind of like Kris. I mean, we grew up as roller coaster and park enthusiasts, love the parks, love the industry, and we're fortunate enough to grow into a career in the industry, which, you know, you hear the saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. I don't know if I agree with that 100%, but it's definitely easier than, say, if I had to wake up and sell refrigerators for a living. It is what we love. We're passionate about it. And, you know, I mean, my side, just coming in, I've done some writing for the museum. We're doing info placards. So that's been one of my roles so far, but just generally next man up, whatever is needed, you know, whether it's organizing the shipment of a roller coaster car to the museum or going there in person to help host an event. You know, that's kind of what we're really there for, whatever is needed.
So, Mark, you've been on the show before. We've talked a little bit about 3DX Scenic and what that incorporates and some of how you got to there. Kris, what about you? Before you joined the museum, what was your professional career like?
So I've done a few things. I've started my sort of journey in the attractions industry all the way back in 2003 at then Paramount's Great America, working market research at the front gate with a Palm Pilot. So that should tell you how, you know, aged that's become. And
you know what PDA is still.
It's okay.
He doesn't even know what that is. So
yeah, no one knows what that is. All right. So it was a thing that was a phone that couldn't make a phone call, and all it could do was 3 things, and it was glorious. So
BlackBerry, you know what BlackBerry is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. It was a boring BlackBerry. It didn't even have color screens. It was just designed to figure out where people were coming from. And now we just do that on social media automatically, just giving them information. So we were kind of like the very beginnings of social, I guess, at the park. So I did that for 2 years. Worked at Discovery Kingdom. Then it was just Six Flags Marine World and Waterworld Concord for a year with their picnic stuff. And then kind of fell out of it for a little while, got back into it, doing some blogging starting around 2010. And then from starting in 2013, I started to work with Nicholas Laskowicz and Robert Engel, who are ACE members in Northern California, on a history series on YouTube about old amusement parks in the Bay Area. And because I've always been fascinated by history, and the Bay's had quite a bit of history when it comes to parks. So we did that for 3 years, caught the attention of Six Flags. They had me come out to Over Texas, did that for about 2.5 years. And then after that, we decided, you know what? The museum sounds like kind of a cool, interesting opportunity. And here we are today.
Cool. Cool.
So, Kris,
Thank God.
the museum's mission is to make sure I get this right: discover, preserve, interpret, and share. Of those four pillars, which do you feel is the most challenging right now?
That's a good question. Right now, I would say it's sharing. It's the fourth pillar. The museum's still under construction, so it's hard to say, yes, come on by and take a look at it, right? There's occupancy issues that still need to be addressed to make it ready for actual museum, being open. And so a lot of people don't understand that or just don't want to listen about that. So being able to share the facility has been a challenge at times, but I feel like between Mark and I, we've been really trying to push for additional events, additional opportunities for people to see the facility, because once you get out there and you see it in person, it all makes sense.
Yeah, and I could say, spoken from experience, Kris brought me out there during the summer of 2024. So that was right before I was invited to join the board. And like a light switch, I got it. Because conceptually, you could say, oh, it's a private collection, or, not knowing what it is. It's someone's private collection in a warehouse that no one's ever going to see. But then when you walk into the space and it opens itself up to you. And really, for me, what really opened my eyes, and what I think we do really well in the space, and what guests will see when we open, and what guests see now when they come for special events, is that it's not just a history lesson, it's a story. And we try to tell the story, really showing the evolution of technology. Because it's one thing to note a historic ride like Leap the Dips or the Coney Island Cyclone or any of the switchback railways. But then when you walk into our section, this is an example where we have our Wild Mouse vehicles. You can see how those ride vehicles have evolved from the old Myler and Herschel style right up to Mach and Mauer, how they are these days, where you started off with inline seating, more like a log ride, and they evolved to two across seating. So to me, that's one of the best attributes that the museum has, beyond just saving and savoring the history. Because amusement parks and roller coasters, if you think about them, they represent escapism, they represent happy memories, and it's a legacy activity, especially in America, going back to Coney Island's development in the late 1800s right through today. Is that has really become part of American culture, maybe more so than anywhere else in the world. When you think roller coaster, you really think America, but we also tell that story worldwide. We've got several great exhibits from Europe and beyond. So it's just one of those that when you go in the space, you see that and you get it, and you see how special this really is.
Speaking of, sorry to interrupt, guys, real quick, but speaking of seeing that technological leap, right now the interior of the building is still very much under construction, so it's very much warehouse space, right? Mm-hmm. So sitting right next to Montezuma's Revenge, one of the first launch coasters ever built, that flywheel launch, is the Cart of King to Ka. Yeah. It's just kind of so surreal to be able to see those two, that evolution go from that flywheel to that hydraulic launch. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So now you do at the museum, if I'm not mistaken, you have a lot of iconic pieces, everything from the Big Bad, I think a train from Big Bad Wolf to, like you just said, King to Ka. There's a lot of iconic things out there, but there's also other historical things. And what process do you go through to decide what pieces of history are critical to preserve? Because obviously, just because it's historical doesn't mean necessarily it should be in a museum, and you only have so much space. So what kind of a process do you go through just to find out, okay, this is a cool piece, but does it translate?
And Kris, you could speak to the process. Sorry, I was just going to say, like, historical is subjective. So we do have these conversations when the board votes on, do we want to talk about moving this piece to the museum or not? So, I mean, there's only so far you can go. In other words, we don't need 35 aero development corkscrew cars, for example, because they're all more or less the same. But we want to make sure that each era and each design and really each manufacturer is represented in the space, because it's not telling the story of one manufacturer or one genre of roller coaster. This is the National Roller Coaster Museum and Archives. We're trying to capture it all. So, Kris, you can speak to the process of how we go about acquiring the artifacts.
So it usually follows two different tracks. The first one is tracks, ironic.
No.
I didn't even try on that one. That's how good I am. So the first step is just recognizing that there might be a vehicle that's available. So that can come in two ways. One is when a park reaches out and there's a handshake NDA between us and every single park that we talk to. So, for example, if there is a ride right now that is looking like it's on the way out, the park may reach out to us and say, hey, we're thinking about retiring this. Are you interested? Same the other way. If we see that there's a ride that looks like it's about to be retired, we'll reach out proactively to the park and ask, would this be something you'd be interested in potentially donating to the facility so it can be preserved forever? So from that point, then we take it to the board and the board votes on it. It's a 12-member board from people all across the industry. So not necessarily just manufacturers. There's also some suppliers and there's even some media on there as well. And all of us vote whether or not we want it. We debate it. We had a great debate actually at Carowinds this year, talking about several different vehicles that we may or may not go after. And then from that point on, it's tasked by one board member to say, all right, you're in charge of this, go after him. Or we say, we're going to have to pass on this one.
Interesting. So Mark, you're working in something that is very much so the design of maybe not roller coaster tracks specifically, but of these products that we make in the amusement parks. How do you think that future designers, the future of roller coaster design, can be impacted by a place like the Museum and Archive, a place where you can go back and actually see that progression?
All right, that's really what we're doing. We really believe, our mission beyond the story we're telling is so that this time capsule, let's call it, is not let go forever. So that we have the archives, we have, drawings of rides that never came to be that were proposed, for example. So from an inspiration standpoint, you see today one of the bigger trends that I'm seeing is modern day manufacturers trying to bring back old ride concepts, obviously, that meet today's code. Whether it was S&S Worldwide trying the steeplechase, you see all these different rides. And I love that, because one glaring hole in the industry over the last, say, 15 to 20 years has been the family ride market. And that right now is the hottest thing. If you look across the industry, there's family coasters of all types and sizes, whether they're lift hills or launches. Kris could speak to this, but Gerstlauer is at the forefront. I mean, if you look at the ride at Wallaby, Belgium that opened last year, that's the rage right now. Whereas back 20 years ago, it was bigger, better, badder, record breaking. But so I don't know if that answers your question, but it's kind of, I think the inspiration is to come and look at the history across time and potentially adapt some of that to a new design. We're hosting a family amusement park group this weekend. Kris, you're going to be out there for that meeting, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And it's going to be a lot of their first time seeing the space. So we're really excited about that.
Cool.
So this can be for either one of you, but can you share a story about one of the most unexpected or challenging artifacts that you've acquired and preserved?
Well, I'll go with the obvious one, which is one of the more recent ones, which is King Ka. Like that was a 6-month odyssey from the first time that we had a discussion with the park up to having the vehicle actually be there safe and secure. Actually, it's closer to 8 months, come to think of it. So it was an 8-month discussion to get to where we needed to be. And the logistics behind that were insane, right? But we were so happy to have Upstop Media, Zooter Loopers, and Hollywood Studios be a part of that. Like they were able to cover that story for us in a way that we would never have been able to. Oh, by the way, they also drove the vehicle there, which was what a crazy story to think. Like you literally did drive King Ka across the country. Like that's a story for a lifetime. And that's what we want to do, is we want to make sure that we get the fans involved wherever we can, whether that be through contributions to help keep building the museum or get them directly involved in preservation. We think it's a worthy effort. So I would have to say for me, it's King to Cobb being able to get that one to the facility, and hopefully by this weekend we'll have her up on her display track finally.
Yeah, and speaking to that too, Zooter Loopers did a fantastic video that's on YouTube. We can send you the link and you can include it in the show notes if you want, documenting that journey across America, just showing it with the truck open in front of landmarks. They drove past other amusement parks on the way because, you have to think from New Jersey to Plainview, Texas. That's quite a journey. So
Yeah.
it's a very cool video if you guys haven't seen it. From my side, I'm a little bit newer to the board, so I don't know that there's an artifact I could say personally. But I will say, just going back memory, this is going back to 2009. Richard Munch, Gary Slade, and Pete Owens, board members that are still on the board today, came to visit. I was working at Ride Entertainment at the time, where Kris works now, and came to visit. And they were on their way to Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, to meet with the park to discuss acquiring the lead car and some track from Big Bad Wolf. That was Big Bad Wolf's last year, and I went down with them for that, not knowing, the overall, what the museum was, because the museum had existed, but it didn't quite have the notoriety it has now. So that, just seeing that whole process, even before I was really involved with the museum, was very cool. And it really, when you walk into the museum, it's the first thing you walk into is the Big Bad Wolf with the marquee sign. And it really, I say it sounds corny, it takes your breath away, but if you're a roller coaster fan and you see that, it truly does. I mean, it's one of the most iconic roller coasters of the 20th century.
That's so cool. So what personally for you guys, what's your favorite exhibit?
I'll nominate one. I think not my favorite ride per se, but I think you're saying exhibit. The most impressive one is Avalanche Run / Disaster Transport piece. It is the largest, heaviest. There's a whole piece of bobsled trough from it's a Swiss Bob ride system from Intamin, where Giovanola built it and Intamin sold it. That was the organization. That was how it was done in the day. And one car is kind of positioned up on the trough, so it looks as though it's kind of sliding up the side. If either of you guys have ridden Lava Bora or any of the Intamin bobsleigh, this was the largest one they ever did. And it just, I mean, there's no way you can ignore it. It's really impressive to see.
That's so cool.
For me, it's probably either the wooden coaster exhibit, where we've got the different PTC vehicles and some Pryor and Church and Lake around. It's about 3 stories tall. It also includes a section of track that was cut out from Texas Cyclone the last day it operated Astro World. And so we had stored that section for many years. When we got it into the building, it had about 2 inches of clearance on either side. So it was very tight, but we got it to get up there. And it's quite an impressive sight to see just this big old white section of track just up there 3 stories in the air.
Let me backtrack a section here. Just ask the question: how big is the outdoor component as well as the indoor component of the museum? I don't think we asked that, and I don't think that's on here.
So the museum owns a total of 5 acres outright. So those acres were donated to us by Jeff Novotny at Larson International, which is still next door to us. So we own 5 acres of land. Of those 5 acres, we have about a 20,000 square foot building right now that is filled with the different vehicles. And from there, we're going to be building that out so that the interior can be done and it can be a working museum.
Got it.
Okay. Sorry, I was just trying to get some size and scale in my head. So what?
And we also have a full-size bar that was made out of reclaimed wood from Mean Streak at Cedar Point. And the bar stools themselves are repurposed roller coaster train wheels that you sit on and you can swivel and turn on. So, yeah.
That's
I should emphasize about that. That all of that was donated by Fred Grubb at RMC.
No way.
Fred built the bar for the Golden Tickets in 2016, which were held up in Idaho, and so he just decided to ship it all the way down there. So after a long day of cleaning and moving stuff around, sit down, relax, have yourself a tasty beverage.
Nice.
Wow, you said that, and I genuinely thought it was a bit. That's like too cool to exist. A bar made out of Mean Streaks.
And it's just one of these. You have to come and see it. Like surrounding the bar, other artifacts like old brake levers. If you've ever been on an old wooden coaster that has the manual controls, like the Coney Island Cyclone, the Lakeside Cyclone. I think the Cannonball at Lake Winnie in Georgia. There's a handful of those left, and we've got several of those. So just everywhere you look, it's that onion, right? It there are layers. And yeah, you, like any other museum, you get out of it what you put into it. If you walk through it real fast and you're like, okay, bang, 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 yeah, you could be done in 30 minutes. But someone like you two could spend all day in there and not see everything. So it's really, if you go into the experience, really wanting to absorb the story and the history, it is at least a full day experience.
Wow.
It can be, and I get exactly what you're saying, because my wife and I were up in Sandusky last summer, and we went to the Merry-Go-Round Museum up there. We didn't even know it existed until we went up there, and we see the Merry-Go-Round Museum. Oh, let's go. It'd probably take us about 15 minutes to go in and out of. We were there for hours, just every little piece of intricate. You know that it was somewhere at a park somewhere or a carnival, and just seeing all the history and the context to see where it came from, and just the stories that come with it. Yeah, I agree. You could you don't want to walk up and think, well, we're going to be in and out of here in an hour. It literally, I can imagine making down to your museum someday. It would be an all day event just to go in and see that. Now, I don't know, on the Big Bad Wolf train that you have, does it have the I don't remember. Did it have a casing of a wolf face on it?
No.
Okay.
No, it just has Busch Gardens on the front of it.
Okay. It would have been cool if back in the day, now Big Bad Wolf was iconic. Now, if you've ever ridden the Bat, which I know you didn't, not the original, the original Bat at Kings Island, it had the bust of a bat on the front of the trains.
Yeah.
Those trains are probably long gone, trashed, and wherever those heads are.
Yeah, Arrow reused. I don't know if it was the same mold, but they did a similar design for the Vampire at Chessington World of Adventures when that opened. That's now running trains from Vekoma, but when that ride first opened back, I want to say it was the early 90s, it's called the Vampire. So the same theme and the area called Transylvania. So I agree, though. On the Big Bad Wolf, it has a dimensional wolf on the marquee sign, and that was kind of that icon of the wolf is watching you and the eyes light up. And, it was, for me, as iconic a night ride as the Beast is, to be honest with you, that because you had the German village, the first half of it, where you kind of swooped through the village and the lights were flickering in the windows as you went through this Bavarian village. And then it got pitch black. You went up the second lift hill, made the 90-degree turn, dove 99 feet down to the Rhine River, and did that S-bend where you were swinging beyond 90 degrees. It was just breathtaking beyond anything. And just it's a loss for the park, but I would say the ride they replaced it with, Verbolten, is a suitable replacement. It's just I think the longtime visitors of the park will forever talk about that ride.
Yeah, Verbolten is really fun. I will admit that is a great ride, but I'm sure it doesn't quite capture the magic of the Big Bad Wolf. So Kris, you ran the Lost Parks of Northern California, as we talked about briefly earlier. What is, if you don't mind, one lost park you'd like to highlight, your favorite, so to speak, that you got to talk about on that series?
For me, and I think for the whole crew, because I can only take credit for really creating the show and writing it, but Nicholas and Robert really were the ones that helped make me look a lot better than I really did. So I would have to say it's Frontier Village in San Jose. What a kitschy little Western themed park in what became a big metropolis, and I think that's kind of the real big storyline that kind of underlined a lot of that series, which is, we call it progress, but progress comes at sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And in this case, a suburb grew up around Frontier Village, and then they started complaining about the noise. Well, it was there first. And yet we're seeing that exact same storyline play out again in Santa Clara with Great America, is that the area around it has grown up and it's no longer viable for a theme park. And that's tough because I grew up in San Jose, so I never got to experience Frontier Village. But the fact that there is such a robust following of that park, and every year they still have the reunion picnic in the same city park that replaced the actual theme park, and they still have a gunfight every year. Got to get a city permit to do it, but they still do that, and it's really cool to see them keeping the history of that park alive. Some 30 plus years after it's gone.
Cool.
So we're talking about your favorite lost park. And let me take it down a notch on that and to go inside the park. What is your favorite lost ride? A ride that not like a King to Ka that it's gone, but we got artifacts or something it's gone. It's gone. There's nothing left of it.
I'm gonna have to go. That's an easy one for me. It's the Intamin Triple Tree Ferris wheel, the old Sky World. That was such a cool, mesmerizing type of ride. It was super long too, and apparently quite nauseating, depending on how much you ate before you got on it. That ride was just the pinnacle, I felt, of technology. Right? It was just so big and so loud, but I will forever remember the noise that engine made. Like, you can never get that out of my head. I can hear it right now as I'm talking about it. That really high pitched whine. And you knew when that ride went down in the park because it got really quiet really fast.
Also, the only reason to ever watch Beverly Hills Cop 3.
Yes. Which also contributed to the ride dying as quickly as it did in Santa Clara, because all the start stops the ride was never designed to do eventually wore down the structure and they had to take it out.
Wow. Mark, what about you? Do you have anything, any relics that you feel like are special to you?
Relics.
Relics. Yeah, turning 50 next year. I'm a relic. I would say in my lifetime, the single biggest loss of an amusement park, and this is one that's a little bit off most people's radars, but I still think it was a tragic loss and a wrong business decision by its ownership group, was the Myrtle Beach Pavilion. That park was the heart and soul of Myrtle Beach. It was the nucleus. It was before Broadway by the Beach. It was before, it was as the Grand Strand. It's old school, and it filled a full city block, and it very much was the East Coast equivalent of the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. It was clean. It had amazing kinetic energy. It had amazing music. It had an amazing ride lineup. A lot of old school German flat rides from Mach and Huss and Schwarzkopf. And business is business, but in my opinion, it should have never closed. It was closed because an all-year development was to go on that site, because like many parks that have closed, it's usually related to real estate values that are greater than what the park can generate revenue-wise. But the Myrtle Beach Pavilion was always busy. It was always thriving, and the project that was to happen didn't happen because of the real estate crash in the late around 2008, 2009. And to this day, it's just an open field with, I think, a single zip line on it. So kind of tragic. Myrtle Beach is still thriving, obviously, with or without things like Hard Rock Park, but there's still a lot of attractions. People still flood there. It's a great thriving vacation spot. In terms of this is a tough one for me too, because it's a replacement as a remarkable ride. Dueling Dragons at Universal's Islands of Adventure. The greatest, whether it was one track or two track, just all-time best inverted coasters, I think, and I'll stand by that, especially Fire Dragon, the unique elements and the intensity. But then again, the trade-off is we got Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure, which I consider to be the single greatest storytelling coaster in the history of our industry, and truly the everything but the kitchen sink coaster. I mean, every trick in the book is thrown in that ride. It runs with, I don't know if it's 10 or 11 trains, but the trains never stop. It's a continuous moving ride system, and just a remarkable engineering feat from Intamin and Universal Creative.
Yeah, for sure.
How about you, Clete?
Oh, well,
lost roller coaster.
In my life, I will admit that, I'm pretty young, so there's not many, but Disaster Transport is definitely the one I wish I could go back and ride again the most. I rode Disaster Transport when I was, I think, 4, legitimately 4 years old, maybe 5, but that would have been it. It was closed, and I would love to be able to remember it, because I don't at all. Park-wise, I mean, being from Ohio, I would love to have been able to have gone to Gianna Lake, or to SeaWorld Ohio, or in any of its, configurations, but never got to. How about you? Got one?
Yeah, I would say Gianna Lake would be one. I almost went back in '98 and just never did. That's before your time.
Yes.
But roller coaster wise or ride wise, I would say the original Bat at Kings Island, because the thing that made it an intriguing ride was also the thing that caused its downfall. The track didn't bank, so there's a wild swing. We'll never have a ride like that so out of control again. And because it swung so bad, it caused stress on the the track and cause stress on the shocks. And it only lasted 3 years on calendar, but really only operated about a year and a half.
You know,
someone told me that it actually operated for less than 200 days total in its lifetime.
wow.
Probably, yeah, that'd be
I
about.
think Kings Island has an operating schedule of probably 140 to 150 days.
Isn't that many?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that we talked briefly before the podcast started about the stereotype of the Ohio enthusiast. And between David and I, we both just mentioned 4 things from Ohio. That is a bad look. Guys, that's a terrible look.
But guys, we lost. I mean, Ohio had 2 legitimate top-tier historic wooden coasters in the Big Dipper at Jaga Lake and the Screeching Eagle at La Swordsville Lake, or Americana, both John Miller rides. And I was fortunate to have ridden both a while back, I think right around 2000, 2001. And they're both really big losses, I would say, in Ohio's coaster history, because these days the oldest coaster in Ohio, I think, is the Sea Dragon at Columbus Zoo, and then maybe the Blue Streak that's at Cedar Point. So,
So the internet exists, which is good. I'm pro that. But it does mean, and this is, I think, also a very good result of that people can learn a lot more about things like roller coasters than before. If you wanted to be, a doctor, you might find biology textbooks in the library. You're probably not finding textbooks about Intamin and mock rides, though. But the internet, of course, has room for those sorts of things. So how is that shaping the way that the museum works? People are going to come in probably more informed than they would have otherwise, and that trend is probably going to continue to go forward. Do you think things like POVs and YouTube channels where they talk about roller coasters are changing the state of coaster fandom?
I think it is. And the museum is definitely looking at integrating all of that into their displays so that you can see exactly what type of, what that ride was like. There may be an opportunity where we can use virtual reality, where you can sit in the exact same car that you are literally riding on with VR goggles, right? That would be something that would be really cool to do. It's a double-edged sword, though, because you have people that also think that they know more than they actually do. And it can be tough sometimes to see the armchair engineers who seem to think that the ride should have always stayed up, nothing ever goes away, and that maintenance budgets are not a real thing, and that all you have to do is hit, Control plus M, and there you go. You've got more money, like in Roller Coaster Tycoon. It just doesn't work out that way.
Yeah.
It is a good point, though, Clete, because I do agree that I wouldn't say the enthusiast community is getting, smarter per se in their knowledge of rides and roller coasters, because it's a very niche industry, and like anything else that's very niche, there's going to be a very hardcore fan base. But I think, generally speaking, more of the general public have become made better aware of various theme parks through YouTube and other sources like that. I have a lot of friends that are not enthusiasts at all that follow a lot of these channels. And another friend of mine was in Vienna, Austria, just kind of bumming around Europe, and went to the Wiener Prater and was sending me pictures. And I'm just thinking, like, 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been a thing. It wouldn't even be on someone's radar. But it's like, no, this is part of what I want to do when I go to Vienna, because I recognize it's like going to Coney Island. And there are other parks, across Europe and other places that have gotten a lot more attention through YouTube channels and the like.
So this is kind of a parkside question, but I'm going to throw it out anyway. Like, the experience that you give to each guest, to one individual person, can be magnified, absolutely thrown up in a good way or in a bad way on social media. If somebody has a great experience, they can go viral with that experience on TikTok or YouTube. And likewise, if they have a bad experience, they could go viral with them talking about their bad experience on TikTok or YouTube. This is a big question, but if you're a theme park operator, do you think that the existence of the social internet and the rapidity with which information can move makes things easier or more difficult?
I'll throw a different word in there. It makes it more complicated.
Yeah,
but I don't think it makes it more difficult. I think it makes it easier and more complicated, in that this is a whole new position on a team digital marketing position that has to monitor this and address it in real time versus letting it sit there and snowball out of control. Because the truth is the truth, but if enough people read the same thing over and over again, anything can become the truth, as we know that in any walk of life. So I would say that complicated is really the word.
And as someone who has been on that side of the marketing team with parks and other brands, I can say that it is most definitely a double-edged sword. On the one hand, yes, it's very easy to get your message out and to try to control the narrative, but there are times when you will simply not be able to control that narrative. And there's absolutely nothing that you can do about that. You can fight it as hard as you want, and there's so much effort being put into that. It doesn't make any sense at that point. And that's where you just get that irreparable harm that you may not be able to recover from necessarily. Even the best PR people wouldn't be able to shake some things on that stuff. So I look at it like I personally post a lot less now than I used to on my personal stuff, just because I just don't feel the need.
Going back a couple of years, one of the big trends that was starting to emerge, I'm going to say, 18 or 19, was VR, the VR goggles. And it's going to have a whole new experience when you get on the roller coaster to put these VR goggles on. And it seemed like it was the groundswell was building, and then maybe the pandemic had something to do with it. You don't want to wear goggles someone else had worn at that moment. But do you think that VR experience, is that something that was just kind of a bad concept? Did it misfire? Is it going away, or will it make a comeback? What's your thoughts on that?
It wasn't a bad concept, I don't think. I think it actually was a good concept. I think it was just implemented incorrectly on the wrong attractions.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you got to experience the ones on the towers, that's where it was done very well. I think the bigger issue was the capacity or lack thereof that really killed that concept overall.
Yeah, I would say it's a capacity thing, but it's also, every line item in a budget is scrutinized especially on a corporate park. And you're taking a ride like an old Aero loop screw or corkscrew coaster that seats 28 riders. And now you need to have somewhere between 30 and 60 of these sets. And then you also need to have 3 to 4 more team members staffed at the ride to handle fitting the guest's head and adjusting and cleaning and all this. Meanwhile, the train is sitting in the station for 7 to 8 minutes, and you're getting, fraction of the capacity that the ride is designed to do. A personal bias for me is I think VR does have a place in the FEC realm or the extra pay gaming realm, where capacity is not as big of an issue. But I don't personally feel like it added that much more to these rides, whether it's a tower or a coaster or what have you, to justify the cost and the slash in capacity, because that's a guest experience. And now you have people waiting in line for a ride that would normally be a 10 to 15 minute wait. They're waiting in line an hour. And the ride at its heart and soul is the same thing. It's just you're watching something else. And to that, there's no greater example of escapism than riding a roller coaster, going 60 miles an hour out in the open air and performing these acrobatic maneuvers that were engineered for you to experience in a safe manner. And now we're basically putting it's sort of like with my kids and trying to control screen time. We don't need more screen time. And that's what it was for me. It was just doing, and it was a frustrating time for me. And I think it kind of phased itself out and ran its course. But I think for specialty attraction, there is a place, as long as for a show experience, let's say, there's a staging area where the next group of 20, 30, 40 people are fitted up and ready to go into the theater so that the show can continuously run and the queue line can move as well.
Yeah. If it's the rate limiting step in the process of getting people on and off the ride, it's a bad idea. I think full stop. You can't hurt capacity that way. And also, I mean, I don't know, I have no actual knowledge of this, but it does seem like it cannot be as effective as, like, it is expensive to your point. You're staffing 3 or 4 more people. Well, that could be the same amount you would have to staff for a whole new, like, new generation enterprise for the year. And there's no way it changes your park for the better as much as like something like a new enterprise would. And of course, a new enterprise is going to be more expensive than 40 sets of VR goggles, but they're not on, you know, the same universe and not coming from the same.
Or I won't mention where this was, but one of the few times I experienced that was on a hyper coaster.
Yeah.
And that could probably, you can narrow down where it was, but halfway through the ride, my screen went black.
Yeah.
And here I am going along at 65 miles an hour, can't see anything, like riding with a blindfold. So I took the thing off and I was holding it in my hand. You know, it was attached to me. There was a tie off or whatever, but I'm just thinking, you know, safety and efficiency and show and all that. And it just wasn't for me, it wasn't a consistent enough experience on a ride with dynamics like that.
Yeah. Well, now we're on the topic of trends. Let me just ask. Okay, so both of you, you're running a park. You have the budget, you got all the thing in front of you, and you are in Planet Coaster realm. Designing your own roller coaster. What are 5 key components that you want that roller coaster to have? Wow, that wasn't on the notes. I'm sorry. I just thought of that one.
Rewritability.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Great.
I'm old. I don't want to be told how I have to ride something. There's always that ride and someone says, well, you have to stick your head forward, put your feet in the air, lean at a 90-degree angle, and maybe you won't get hurt. That I'm not riding that anymore.
For me,
I mean, an obvious one would be airtime. I guess that's an attribute that I like, but
yeah, I'm gonna have to go.
go ahead,
I have to
Kris.
agree with Mark. Like you can't have a ride. I don't want to do a one and done, and not a one and done because it was so intense I can't ride it again. I want to be able to jump right back in line and want to ride it again and not be sore. You know, I'm not hardly consider myself old, though I think I'm getting there. But I would like that rewritability. I want to be able to have that airtime. I don't want to have, you know, constant like ejector air for me. That's just not fun if it's throwing you up into the restraint in that certain way. And the biggest thing for me is I want my ride to have soul. I want my ride to feel like it's an experience, as opposed to something that was just kind of cobbled together and said, we got to do this, and this. Boom, it's done. No, it's got to have a flow to it where you feel like you are part of this attraction and you are along for this ride because it's just that good. Almost like when you're watching a TV show or a movie and you forget that there's nothing, like you're just engrossed in the screen and you forget the peripheral is gone. That's when you know it's a great ride.
Yeah, and variance in elements and pacing as well. Yeah. That's when, you know, it's when an engineer becomes a creative. Yeah. So their element design and dynamics and everything that goes into a ride tells a story, even if it's not an IP. You know what the designer was going through. And I go back to the Jurassic World Velocicoaster as one of the best of that, because you've got 2 distinct halves. The first half is, you know, tight, knotted track. You're in the raptor pen, and there's airtime and tighter elements. And then you hit that second launch and you're just, boom, you're out. And then you become a circus act. The whole park is watching you on the train. Everyone's down on the plaza watching as you crest the top hat. You go through the stall, you do that double helix, and then the Mosasaurus roll over the water. Probably the all-time greatest inversion that I've ever experienced. Yeah. And it's re-rideable. You don't have to know how to ride it. You just have to sit down and experience it. And everything Kris just said, I think that ride checks all those boxes.
Like, put plainly, why do you do what you do there? What makes it worth it, so to speak?
It's doing something that nobody else is doing, right? Mm-hmm. And with the goal of always making it accessible so that others can enjoy it as well. So you can share in that passion. Yeah, there's plenty of people that will go out and they'll buy or try to buy these cars and keep them in their garage forever and never show them off and just say, hey, look, I've got this. Great. All right, that's fine. That's not our goal. Our goal has always been to make these accessible and make them so that they are able to be learned from and appreciated for generations to come. I think, and that's a really cool thing to do, right? Who else gets to rescue roller coasters? Wouldn't necessarily say for a living, because none of us are paid for this, but I feel, at least me personally, and I think Mark shares this too, it's worth the effort. It's worth all the hard work and the dedication to make this happen, even if it's not necessarily appreciated right away, because we know that saving these things, which are iconic to some of these locations, is worthwhile rather.
Yeah, I would add, I kind of compare this to, I'm cognizant of history all the time, and how where we are now will one day be history. Like Andy Bernard said, how do we know we're in the good old days? Before we leave them, let's say. And when I'm around older members of my family or just other people that have great experiences, I love sitting, having a beer or a coffee and just asking them questions about, like I would ask my grandmother what it was like taking the ferry to Rye Playland in the 1930s and 40s, or Coney Island, and listening to her stories. And of course, they weren't going to be 100% factual, but I got the gist of what that was. And I think what we're doing on the board is really, this is a time capsule, right? It's a very niche thing, but it's also a universally loved thing, that is roller coasters and amusement parks in general. It's not front of mind for anybody, but I think if you ask anybody about their childhood, an amusement park is going to be part of it, depending on where they lived. If it's Cincinnati, it may have been Coney Island or Kings Island. If it's Northern California, it's probably the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, Frontier Village. There's any number of this. So what we're doing is really saving that story. We're hitting pause on a time machine, and we're going to bring people back to see that, and see the technology again that we discussed earlier. Just see the evolution of roller coaster vehicles and the rides themselves. And then to go along with it, just the immersiveness of having all historic signage. We've got a ton of stuff from Jazzland / Six Flags New Orleans and several other parks that are no longer in existence. So you can walk in there and get that feel for what it was like walking down the Midway, the Pontchartrain Beach section of Six Flags New Orleans, because we have the signage for several rides and ride vehicles. So we are a roller coaster museum first and foremost, but we have ride vehicles from flat rides. We've got signage. We've got, you name it. It's really that for Kris, myself, and the board, it's an honor to do this. And we truly believe anyone, that comes to visit, or, whatever the future carries, we'll have more videos and we'll have more content and all that. We firmly believe it will be appreciated. And I think that's really what drives us. I think we would do it either way because we love it, but knowing in the back of our heads and in our hearts that it's part of our fabric as Americans, roller coasters. And it's important to save that and tell that story.
While they started off as Russian mountains, right? And then eventually the Parisians kind of made them with just the wooden sleds. The roller coaster is a distinctly American art form that has transformed the whole world. And now you've got all sorts of countries around the world, in Europe and even China, now building their own coasters. It is a universal thing that us as human beings seem like we have to do. We have to challenge a roller coaster, just because there's a reason it's still the king of the Midway after 125 years.
Yeah, true. Cool stuff.
So as far as the roller coaster museum, do you have a peer in the industry, or are you pretty much run unopposed?
We're pretty much the only ones that are really building a public facility. There are plenty of people that have, they purchased single vehicles, or they have like their memorabilia room, and that's fine. But we're the only ones that are really trying to make this accessible and have the largest collection. There's a couple of folks that they'll open up their doors, but it's a private residence.
Right.
And we wish them, of course, the very best of luck, because it's all about preserving this history.
Yeah.
But in terms of a public museum
Absolutely.
on roller coasters, we're the only thing out there right now.
And that gives you a wide, as the years go on, the steel coasters, they definitely have a service life or shelf life, and that are very iconic. And there's a lot of palettes that a lot of colors you can paint this with, and really expand. It's something I wish we'd pulled up to have on the screen. Is right now you're currently reconstructing a corkscrew from what's the park?
Canby Lake.
Kennedy. Canopy Lake, sorry. Yeah, which is really cool that you literally have those parts and you're reassembling that. And just think of all the pieces of iconic roller coasters that could have been reassembled that have been lost over the years, and you're putting a stop to that. That some of these iconic pieces, not just necessarily the cars or sections of track, but actual sections of the coaster itself can be transported and reassembled.
I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is the latest photo we got 2 days ago from Bainham as they were finishing painting the canopy corkscrew.
Hold on a second. It's just really cool.
Incredible. That's incredible. Look at that.
And that was the second ever corkscrew ever fabricated. It came right after Knott's Berry Farm's prototype. That's now at Silverwood.
Yeah.
So this started out life at Old Chicago, which was the first indoor amusement park in America in 1975. And then it ran for a short while at the Alabama State Fairgrounds as a permanent ride that operated just part of the fair, like the wooden coaster in Puyallup. And then in 1987, Canopy Lake Park purchased the ride, and O.D. Hopkins did, because they were a nearby manufacturer, did some refurbishment work on it to get it up and running. And it ran there through 2023, I believe.
Wow.
Or 2022, I could be off. But either way, it was the only looping coaster in the, until Untamed. But that and Untamed were the only two looping coasters in the state of New Hampshire. So this is iconic, and people are going to be driving under this on our new entry road. So this is sort of that marquee when you enter the facility.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
And I'll also add, the museum, while, we're very proud of what we're doing, the industry recognizes us as a resource. Our board is very knowledgeable and passionate about the industry and parks. When they have special anniversaries, they reach out to us and ask if they could borrow a ride vehicle in our collection. SeaWorld Orlando just celebrated their 50th anniversary, and as part of that, SeaWorld San Antonio reached out and asked if they could borrow. We have a Texas splashdown log flume boat. That was the flume that started out life at Boardwalk and Baseball in Florida, then moved to the Texas SeaWorld Park and was retired several years ago, and we had that boat. And then Worlds of Fun also celebrated in 2023 50th anniversary in Kansas City, and they had a museum, a pop-up museum that they did. And as part of that, they borrowed one of our vehicles, the Orient Express lead car, which was a custom aero looping coaster. So we serve the industry. We're here to represent the roller coaster, the history, but we're also partners with the industry, and all of us work in the industry. So it works out.
Not only that, and I'll give you guys a bit of breaking news. I can't tell you who is asking or what ride, but a park has asked us for some of our historic blueprints because they don't happen to have any of their blueprints anymore for a ride, and they need to do some work on it. So they've asked the museum to send what we have, and we've done that. So we're actively preserving current attractions now, in addition to ones that have already been retired.
That's a cool thing.
That's really cool. So one more question I'd like to ask to wrap it up is you just mentioned you all work in the industry on the board at the museum. There's a lot of people, maybe they're students, maybe they're just young professionals, maybe they're people who have had careers in other areas, and now they are saying, how can I become a part of the attractions industry? How can I make this a part of who I am? What would you tell people in that scenario?
Well, I consider Mark a mentor, so I'm going to forward that I'll let him answer that one.
Thanks, Kris.
You're welcome.
I'm so proud of everything you do every day.
Thanks,
Couple things, because we're in the industry today has a lot more opportunities for young, passionate people than when Kris and I came up in the industry, where we were, at the time, I'm not saying people didn't love the industry, but it was a lot of people who just considered it a job. And yeah. I happen to sell roller coasters, or I happen to work at a park. I lived down the street from this park. I became a ride-op in Kittyland, and 30 years later, I'm the general manager. Today, there's a lot more opportunity. Number one, investigate the IAAPA Expo Ambassador Program that I always suggest, because if you think you know and know the industry, you don't really know it until you see the back of house. That's true of any business, like a restaurant, retail, doesn't matter. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. You're not above any position. Get a job at a theme park, I always say, and work in every department: food, beverage, park services, ride operations, retail, security, admissions, everything. Even if you have a BlackBerry in your hand in 2003 or whenever it was, Kris was there.
It's a Palm
That's
Pilot.
really it. Yes, be a sponge. Be a sponge. Know when to listen, I think, is important, because with passion, we kind of feel like we know everything. But there's the business side of the industry, and that's really the side of the industry that drives it. Because if these parks are not profitable, they don't exist. So decisions are oftentimes made with financial ramifications in mind, which they have to be. As we discussed earlier, real estate values have not been friendly to several theme parks when the value, raises above what the park can generate as an amusement park. And that unfortunately has been a thing, in Northern California, as Kris was talking about earlier. So that's really the thing: is reach out, network, be professional, go to events. Don't be afraid to network. Kris and I are here, I've been in the industry now 25 years. Kris, you're what, 20-ish at this point?
On and off, yeah.
So that's kind of the long answer to that. But, IAPA Expo Ambassador Program is great, and get a job at your local park. And it doesn't mean you have to move to Orlando to work at Universal. If you live in Salt Lake City, work at Lagoon. It's a wonderful park.
Yeah.
If you live in Denver, work at Elitch Gardens. It's a great park. And
I go back to, it's so funny that you actually asked that question, because I just saw it recently. Monsters Inc. They were always, there's Monsters, the second one, Monsters University.
Okay.
They're always, what's the last line? They're always hiring in the mailroom. Like Mark said, don't just look down on somebody that's working in custodial. Don't look down on someone that's working in food. They work their tails off. And you can get a better appreciation for just how hard it is to work in a park by actually being there, getting your hands dirty, and doing what needs to be done to make sure the guests have a great experience. It's not all just fun and designing roller coasters, because even designing roller coasters can be an absolute nightmare. So just remember that, and just remember that you're there for one reason. That's to learn and absorb, and to give the guests an incredible experience. Never forget that.
Cool.
And I'll date myself by saying my first job in the industry was at Michigan's Adventure in 1998. I opened Shivering Timbers with the operations team, but as part of being in operations, and this is going back to the 90s when smoking was allowed in the parks, I was there at least 90 minutes past closing with tongs and a bucket, picking up cigarette butts under the queue line and under the station. Wow. Not fun. And I think I was making $5.50 an hour or $6 an hour at that time, or something like that. So, as I always say, you either have to love the industry, be crazy, or a little bit of both, and let it go from there. But I got to do everything, though. I worked food and beverage. I worked front gate. Ride operations was my favorite, because I had a partner in crime there. His name was Jay, who works for Universal right now. We reconnected after all these years, and we would always close Shivering Timbers together and see how many dispatches an hour we could get. And that, I still remember that like it was yesterday, and it's 27 years ago. One of the best summers of my life.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, so I gotta know. Do you remember any of these numbers? What were you doing? How many were you cranking out on Shivering Timber?
We were hitting interval every cycle. So our goal was to, I think the cutoff for where you would not have a train stop on the lift in the block was if you dispatched the train as the other train was dropping off the far turnaround. And it would barely make it.
All right. That's good. That's good work. That's good work. That's good stuff. That's fun. Well, cool. Thanks so much for your time, guys, for giving us a great interview.
It's a very cool interview.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I love the history. I like the context. I like just hearing stories about name whatever coaster it is.
Yes. And about people who love to do what they do. That's always exciting in any field. So thanks.
Well, we very much look forward to seeing you all at one of our construction preview events in 2026. Like I said, we're not ready for occupancy yet, but we're still going to give everyone the opportunity multiple times next year to be able to experience that museum for the first time, touch those vehicles that you remember riding, and sort of reconnect with all those great nostalgic memories that you have.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Cool. So great
And as a
stuff.
bonus, only 1 hour to the north is Wonderland Amusement Park, which is an absolute must visit. So you can tie the two together in one trip. It is out of the way. It's 5-hour drive from the Metroplex, but well worth it. And, there's other stuff you could do around there. Go to the Big Tex and eat some steak, or watch someone try to eat a 72-ounce steak.
Yeah. We'll go together and I'll watch
Yeah.
you eat a 72-ounce. That sounds good. Well, we'll make sure to put some links in the descriptions to a number of things we mentioned today, as well as the website and information for the National Roller Coaster Museum and Archive. So thank you all for watching so much. We appreciate you. We'll see you back here soon.